said that we win, that she loved me. And I was the best dad. I can feel my baby.
Julius Batties cries as he describes his last phone call with his 7-year-old daughter, Julissia Batties, who died Tuesday at her home where she lived with her mother and brothers.
She was crying out for help. Nobody did nothing for my baby. And I just want justice for my baby.
Welcome, or welcome back. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is about a 7-year-old little girl who was betrayed by her mother, her brother, and by child services. And while arrests were made in the case, it took quite a while. And to this day, 3 years after this little girl's death, there still has been no justice served. This is the story of Julissia Batties. Julissia Batties was born on April 26, 2014, to her mother, Nevasia Jones, and her father, Julius Batties. Julissia was a very happy and compassionate child who loved singing and shopping. The little girl loved unicorns, Minnie Mouse, and playing with her 4 cousins who were more like siblings to her. Her favorite movie was Frozen with Princesses Anna and Elsa, and she also loved to learn new viral dances that she saw on TikTok. Julissia was also said to adore her father, and she loved to spend time with him. Julissia had been born at Kings County Hospital, and after her birth, she was immediately taken into child services custody due to a history of parental drug abuse and alcohol abuse. Julissia's mother had also had her previous 5 children taken out of her custody. According to records, Nevasia's other children had cuts, bruises, and welts on their bodies. The mother would also smoke cigarettes and then blow the smoke into her children's faces, even though some of them had asthma. Additionally, there had been multiple domestic disturbance calls placed to the home. And Julissia's mother claimed that her father was violent towards her. However, he had no criminal convictions and would say that Nevasia just had mental issues and was fighting dirty. After the removal from her parents' care, Julissia was sent to live with her paternal grandmother, Yolanda Davis, at only 5 days old. The little girl went to live with Yolanda at her Crown Heights apartment in Brooklyn, and when the grandmother allowed Julissia's mother to come visit the newborn, Nevasia held her infant daughter and refused to give her back, which prompted Yolanda to contact the police. Nevasia was then not allowed to return. During the time that Julissia was in her grandmother's care, she was happy and always had all her needs met. Julissia's biological father, Julius, was still allowed to visit his daughter on weekends as well. That's as long as her mother, Nevasia, was not present. But in the background, Nevasia, who had been ordered to undergo anger management classes, parenting classes, and mental health services, was working to regain her custody rights of Julissia. But for the time being, judges ruled that the mother was prone to unpredictable behavior and emotional outbursts, and at one point she had even shown up to a child welfare office and was ready to kick down the doors. Julissia's mother, Nevasia, actually had a rather unstable childhood of her own. She had been raised by her own grandmother, and when she was a teenager, she had run away from home. She had then wound up living in a duplex in Brooklyn with a friend of hers, and not long after, she began dating a man who was 25 years older than her. Nevasia ended up having a son with this older man, and she named the child Paul Fine, who we'll get back to a little bit later on. Even though Julissia was happy in her grandmother's home, when she was only 3 years old in 2017, Child Services decided to remove her from her grandmother's care. This was after they discovered that Yolanda had allowed Julissia's father, Julius, to come over and visit. After Child Services removed Julissia, Yolanda requested a hearing by the State Office of Children and Family Services, who would find that the removal was incorrect and called for a reevaluation to be done. So Julissia would end up being returned to her grandmother Yolanda's care in 2018. And by then, her parents were allowed to have supervised visits with her again at an agency office. Even though it was clear that Julissia was not comfortable with her mother during these visits, Child Services decided that they were going to expand the visits with her mother and allowed Julissia to go spend weekends at her mother's apartment. These visits only proved to make the little girl anxious and distraught. She would tell her grandmother that she did not want to go see her mother, and Yolanda became so concerned that she began to record the things that Julissia would say to her prior to going to see her mom. One time, Julissia even told her grandmother to call the police. When Yolanda asked her why she wanted her to do that, Julissia said because she didn't want to go to her mother's. She was only 5 in saying this.
Grandma, you called the police?
What am I calling the police for?
Because I don't want to go with Mommy.
Why you don't want to go with Mommy?
Oh my God.
You're telling me to call the police?
Because I don't want to go with Mommy.
So you're saying call the police?
Yeah.
What is wrong at Mommy's house that you don't want to go to Mommy's house? Tell me, it's okay. Come, Grandma gotta do your hair. Why are you crying? You don't want to see Mommy? Why? Huh? You what? You want to see Mommy? Why you don't want to see Mommy? Don't cry. You gotta go see Mommy. You don't love Mommy? Why are you crying like that? We just going to visit, okay? Don't cry. Why are you crying, Pumpkin? You have to see Mommy. Okay? Don't cry. Why? What happened? I'm sorry. You don't want to go? Why?
In another recording, Julissia confided that her 3 older brothers kept fighting and beat up a younger sibling. They make him bleed, she said. What do they do? Yolanda asked. Something bad, the girl replied. Yolanda knew that something was not right in Nevasia's home, and she told a caseworker a child should not feel that way about her mom. She's scared to death of her. But Yolanda's concerns were just discounted, and Child Services assumed that the grandmother just wanted the case to be closed. 5-year-old Julissia was getting mental health treatments by this point, and it was noted that during her sessions, she would become very distraught whenever her mother was brought up. She also displayed a lot of anger towards her grandmother, whom she loved, whenever Yolanda brought up a visit at her mother's. During some of her visits with Nevasia, Julissia would even hide in the corner and begin crying. Yolanda brought this up to a caseworker, but the caseworker told her, "Oh, I know, but she has to see her mom." There was even a scheduled visit with her mother in January of 2020, and while Julissia was waiting for her mother, Nevasia, to come, she was acting very nervous and was very rigid. But as soon as they told her that Nevasia wasn't going to make it, the little girl instantly relaxed and had a smile on. So given that background, it might be a little surprising that Julissia was sent to live with her mother full-time in March of 2020 without any supervision. Yolanda had taken her granddaughter for a visit with her mother for a weekend in March, and Nevasia was supposed to bring Julissia back to the police department after. However, she never arrived, and Yolanda was told by a supervisor that Julissia was going to be on an extended stay with her mother now. They claimed this was due to the pandemic.
The weekend became 90 days. 90 days became you have to do an independent review.
Davis says she repeatedly went to ACS and SCO Family of Services to get her granddaughter back, not knowing why she was being allowed to stay with a woman she tells us abused the young child.
The girl's court-appointed lawyer even fought against this and sent multiple emails to Child Protective Services saying how much Julissia had expressed wanting to live with her grandmother. The only reason Julissia even liked visiting her mother at all was because she got to play with her younger brother, Nevasia's 6th child. So it didn't take very long after Julissia had moved in with her mother for Nevasia's neighbors to start noticing troubling signs. Neighbors would say that they constantly heard the mother screaming inside the apartment, and they noticed that the little girl would come and go from the apartment building all on her own. Some of these neighbors had even contacted child welfare officials with their concerns, but had just been brushed off. Julissia's grandmother, Yolanda, had also started to fight to get custody of her granddaughter back immediately after she was sent to live with her mother. She knew it was not a good situation. Police would also confirm that they had responded to more than a dozen domestic disputes at the address where Julissia's mother lived, though it's unknown if these calls were before or after Julissia moved in with her. On July 31st, 2021, Yolanda would receive a series of text messages from Julissia's phone, and they alarmed her and made her wonder if her granddaughter had actually sent them herself. The text began with, "Grandma, it's me, Julissia. I'm leaving today. My mom is letting me live with my brother." The grandmother asked, "Where?" Julissia replied back, "Texas." She said, "I'm not coming back." But for one reason or another, this didn't end up happening. And about a week later, on August 6th, Julissia was seen with a black eye. And when Yolanda asked her where it had come from, she claimed that it was her mother who had given it to her. Yolanda would then immediately call Child Services and report what she had seen. A caseworker would then visit the home, but Nevasia just told them that the little girl had gotten hit in the face accidentally with a water gun. And this explanation proved to be enough. But 2 days later, a neighbor of Julissia would see the little girl in the elevator with her mother, and she was wearing sunglasses to cover up the black eye. And just days later, on August 10th, neighbors of Julissia and her mother said they were awoken to the sounds of Nevasia screaming, this time not in anger, but in fear. Nevasia had run down the hallway of her apartment, and she knocked on her neighbor's door, screaming, "Help, my daughter stopped breathing." The neighbor had rushed into Nevasia's apartment and discovered 7-year-old Julissia laying down in her room, halfway as her older brother was holding her partially up. The girl was limp and naked. Julissia's mother claimed that this was because she had urinated on her clothing. The mother continued by saying that Julissia had woken her up screaming her mother's name. She went and asked the girl if she was all right, and she said that her stomach hurt. After that, she'd fallen and hit her head on the table. Nevasia and the neighbor would contact 911. But unfortunately, Julissia was not able to be saved, and about an hour after being brought to the hospital, she succumbed to her injuries. Paramedics had found the little girl to be cold to the touch, and she had trauma to the side of her face and to the right side of her body. When Nevasia sat down to speak with police, she would tell them that she had been awoken at 5 o'clock in the morning to find Julissia in the bathroom vomiting and urinating on herself. Due to feeling ill, the girl had then stumbled and hit her head on a desk. Nevasia claimed that Julissia's half-brother, Paul Fine, who was 17, had then come in and carried the little girl into her bedroom. Here, she passed out and hit her head for a second time. But the thing is, Paul would have a different story to tell authorities. He claimed that Julissia had spent much of the night up in the kitchen getting snacks and had then begun throwing up in the bedroom. He then admitted to punching the little girl 2 or 3 times in her face, but would change that number later on to 8 times. The teen then explained away the scratches that had been found on Julissia's face to his long fingernails. Following this assault on Julissia, he claimed that the little girl had gone into the living room and fallen asleep. Their mother had gone out to the store and bank, and when she returned back, they both noticed that Julissia was choking and her hands were white. Now, even though Paul had admitted to hurting Julissia, no arrests in connection with her death would be made for close to a year. Finally, in June of 2022, police would arrest both Julissia's mother, Nevasia Jones, and her son, Paul Fine, on charges of murder.
What happened, Nevasia? None of your business. None of your business. I didn't kill my daughter.
Do you love her?
What happened?
Paul would also be charged with SA after it was discovered that following the attack on Julissia, he had done that to her as well. The girl's autopsy had revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to her abdomen, however, not to her face as her brother had claimed. As of right now, Nevasia and Paul are both still sitting in jail awaiting their trial, and it's unclear as to when that's going to be. Part of the reason for that is because Paul got a new lawyer partway through, and Nevasia Jones has been refusing to attend many of her court hearings. Following Julissia's death, her father, Julius, had to fight to get custody of his youngest son. because after Julissia's murder, he had been taken into Child Protective Services custody. However, in October of 2023, he was finally granted full custody of the 4-year-old. And the little boy still asks for his sister sometimes, saying how much he misses her and how he wants to give her a hug and a kiss.
I'm never going to get a chance to see my daughter again. She's a great daughter, the best daughter in the world, you know. Super powerful, super smart. She's my everything still. I think about her every day. She always with me, so I use her as my strength to keep going through life.
But they never listened to what I told them. I got my granddaughter to finally say something to them. My granddaughter said that she did not want to ever go back. ACS and SCO services has failed me. I was trying to keep this from happening.
News of Julissia's death swept through the building where she had lived with her mother, and neighbors made a memorial of candles, stuffed animals, and balloons for her. After a fight with Nevasia for the little girl's remains, her grandmother Yolanda was finally able to hold a memorial service and funeral for Julissia months after her death. The girl's funeral was held on November 1st, 2021 at John's Funeral Home in East New York, where she was buried in a pink casket and a beautiful white dress that the little girl had previously picked out to wear to a wedding. During the service, her father eulogized his dead daughter, remembering the times they shared together, and he said, "Me and my daughter got to go through things because we love each other as much as we did. I had a ball with her. I'd go to work, come home, and try to trick her with the snacks. I love her, and I'm always going to love her. I'm going to miss FaceTiming at night," he added. Well, thank you for listening to Julissia's story today. How much can one child be ignored by child protection workers? Julissia was hiding from her mother, acting anxious during visits, crying, and even telling her grandmother to call the police because she didn't want to go to see her mom. It was obvious that something not right was going on in Nevasia's home, and all social service workers had to do was take the 7-year-old seriously, and she would likely still be alive today. So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least twice every single week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.